Joining us now is NBC News International correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian, NBC's David Rhodes, senior executive editor, and on the phone, MSNBC's Ayman Mohyeldin, who has covered the Middle East extensively. So, Danielle, first, what are we learning? What do we know about this strike?
Yeah, Anna, well, of course, Israeli military action has been seen across the Middle East, but this now includes the Gulf state of Qatar. We know that there were blasts heard in the capital, Doha, earlier, and I'll get right to the statement from the Israeli Defense Forces, which say the IDF conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. Prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence. Now, this is all unfolding rather quickly, Anna. As soon as this came out, it was unclear whether or not the Qataris were aware or had been notified of this attack. And moments later, a statement from Qatari officials, which I will now read to you. The state of Qatar strongly condemns the cowardly Israeli attack that targeted residential buildings housing several members of the political bureau of Hamas in the Qatari capital, Doha. This criminal assault constitutes a blatant violation of all international laws and norms and poses a serious threat to the security and safety of Qataris and residents in Qatar. The ministry affirms that the security forces, civil defense, and relevant authorities immediately began addressing the incident and taking necessary measures to contain its repercussions and ensure the safety of the residents and surrounding areas. While the state of Qatar strongly condemns this assault, it confirms that it will not tolerate this reckless Israeli behavior and the ongoing disruption of regional security, nor any act that targets its security and sovereignty. Finally, investigations are underway at the highest level, and further details, they say, will be announced as soon as they are available. That Israel would conduct a strike on Qatar is quite simply shocking. Qatar has been considered a neutral third country. As you said earlier, Anna, it's been the home of the negotiations for this war between Israel and Hamas, home, of course, to the political branch of Hamas as well. According to Israeli media, I should note, Channel 12 is reporting that not only were the Americans notified of this strike, but that it was given the green light by the U.S. president. We have not yet heard from the White House, I should point out. And I should say that we do not know if those officials targeted by Israel were in fact killed today. But as I say, Anna, a lot of information coming out minute by minute here, and we'll be updating you as we
That's right. We are all working to gather more information. So, David, a lot we still don't know at this moment. We have seen other senior members of Hamas targeted by Israeli forces before. Help us understand how today's strike might fit into the bigger picture. David, we can't hear you. I think we're having issues with your audio, so give us just a moment. We'll come back to you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, we hear you now, so please go ahead.
I apologize. So there's no question that this is an escalation, that targeting Doha and Qatar itself is unprecedented, as far as I know, in terms of Israel and its position in the Middle East. And we have reporting, this is from my NBC colleagues, Tom Winter and Courtney Kube, that the U.S. did have prior notification from Israel that this strike was going to be carried out. We don't have reporting that the U.S. approved this strike, and, you know, that'll be a key point for many people to learn over the course of the day. But again, I think supporters and Prime Minister Netanyahu will say this is a necessary step to go after these leaders that have lived in Doha for years. Opponents, essentially, of Netanyahu will say this is escalating the situation, that the Qataris were trying to act as intermediaries, and now this strike has undermined the Qataris and put them in a very difficult position.
Ayman, we heard about that strong statement from Qatari officials condemning what they're calling a cowardly attack, saying it's a violation of all international laws and norms. What else are you hearing about the reaction coming out of the region right now?
Look, I think it's important to kind of take a step back here for a second and just talk about how severe this escalation is right now. I've been speaking to officials from across the region, and all of them have said that this crosses red lines, not because it was a specific target on Hamas, as Israel is claiming, but because it was an attack on the sovereignty of the state of Qatar. And there have been historical tensions between many of the Gulf countries over the years. There is not necessarily any love lost between them, but at the end of the day, some of the reaction that has been coming out was that this is a complete violation of the sovereignty of all of these countries. It's important to keep in mind, as David was mentioning, Doha, Qatar itself, is a close American ally. It is the headquarters of Central Command in Doha. So if, as we continue to learn more about the details of what America knew and operationally what America knew and whether or not America gave the green light, it'll be interesting to know whether or not Central Command in Doha was also aware of this incoming strike. The attack that took place today, while Israel says targeted Hamas, took place in a very residential area in downtown Doha. Doha is by far the largest city in the state of Qatar. Qatar has a very close relationship with the United States on economic, political, military cooperation. As we all remember, President Trump started his first trip overseas by going to the Gulf countries. He didn't even go to Israel at the time. A lot of questions at the time about some of the relationships that he was forging with these rich Gulf countries. But at the time, Qatar had believed they had a very strong working relationship with President Trump. And of course, the question tonight is going to be whether or not the president specifically gave the approval for the strike to take place. And I think the reaction right now is shock, a lot of disbelief across many of the countries and some of the officials that I've been speaking to in the region. But as we heard there from Danielle as well, the reaction is very strong condemnation coming out of the Qatari government, which is expected to make an official announcement in the next couple of hours about who exactly was in that meeting. We believe that it was a senior gathering of Hamas's leadership, including representatives that represent the political wing of Hamas, not the military wing, which is inside of Gaza, but the senior political wing of Hamas, which was carrying out this meeting to specifically discuss the proposed negotiations that President Trump had announced on Sunday. If you recall, Sunday evening, I was on the air, actually, when the president, on his return back from New York to Washington, D.C., held a small press conference in which he said, we will have some news to announce on Gaza very soon. He tried to signal that he was optimistic. And over the course of the last 24 hours, 48 hours, that proposal, which was very scant on details, by the way, made its way to the Hamas negotiators in Doha. They were getting together today to discuss that proposal when this strike carried out. It is unclear whether or not the leadership of Hamas or the Israeli airstrike was successful in killing the leadership of Hamas, these negotiators. There's some mixed reporting on that right now, and there's no confirmation. Hamas itself has not addressed it, but we'll certainly hear more from Qatari officials in the coming hours about this, Anna.
So, Ayman, just to clarify something, you mentioned that there were ongoing negotiations related to the latest proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. And so do we know where this strike hit is in relation to where exactly those negotiations were happening?
So right now, what we know officially is that and this is based on the Qatari statements, was that it happened in a residential area. And the way that Hamas has its offices in Doha, there is a Politburo, which is kind of the offices of the political wing of Hamas that is in exile in Doha. But at the same time, the actual leaders and representatives of various Hamas factions within the movement have residential houses inside the city. So it seems that this strike took place in the residential part of Doha, where it is believed that some of these Hamas leaders had lived. And as you can imagine, just from an operational point of view for the organization, they're very strict about who has access to which areas and where these meetings take place. Very few people probably knew where that meeting was going to take place ahead of today. It was likely that they were not going to be holding it in a place that is so obvious, such as the offices, the main offices of the Hamas Politburo in Doha. And so as a result of that, there are a lot of obviously concerns why the strike took place in a residential area, because, of course, there may have been innocent civilians nearby. There may have been Qataris, there may have been other nationals. You know, Doha is a city of about maybe 1 million or so residents. The vast majority of those are actually expats, not Qatari nationals. Doha like many other cities in the Gulf, is a city made up mostly of foreign nationals. And because this was in a residential neighborhood, you'd have to wonder whether or not there were any civilian casualties or any civilian damage to the areas in and around it.
Yeah, the video that we're seeing shows there's definitely smoke from those explosions. No word yet on any casualties and whether this strike was successful in taking out the target. Again, believed to be a senior Hamas official. I want to bring in Colonel Jack Jacobs, an MSNBC military analyst. Colonel, thanks so much for jumping on with us. What's your reaction to this strike?
Well, we have to look at it from the following standpoint. You know, Netanyahu bet absolutely everything on his assertion at the beginning of the war that he was going to destroy Hamas utterly. Thus, you know, we see lots of Israeli troops, reservists called up, occupying Gaza, the commitment to go into Gaza City, and so on. A substantial commitment from the Israelis to carry out what Netanyahu said he wanted to carry out. This attack in Doha, then, is not only part and parcel of that, but also a demonstration that the Israelis, certainly Netanyahu government, believes that there is going to be no successful negotiation, notwithstanding American interest in ending it, notwithstanding Qatar's brokering it and other Gulf states being involved in trying to ameliorate the situation. It's a demonstration that Netanyahu has decided that there will be no successful negotiation, certainly negotiation that will result in success for the Israeli side, and thus this commitment to carry out the attack without respect to American, or perhaps one could argue Israeli interests over the long term on.